Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Wednesday morning, June the 15th, and I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. Chat room is open. I did pop the link into what we're talking about for the last couple months, and that's Robert Burney's webpages from Joy to You and Me. So we're going to finish up the one section on codependence today, probably, hopefully. If not, we'll look at it tomorrow. But thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I'm not a counselor or therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows here on Blog Talk Radio. And so you have to listen at your own discretion because I'm talking about abuse, and it's a sensitive subject. And, you know, you have to know what's good for you to listen to, right? Topics of abuse can be very sensitive, and, you know, if it makes you uncomfortable, you have to turn the show off. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my show, you know, have an adult, somebody who can help you make the decision whether you should be listening to my shows, right? There's a lot of adult content on my shows. And, you know, I believe that children should be protected at all times. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and, you know, we're standing up to fight to save children's lives. And so you need to learn how to keep yourself safe when you're online. And so, you know, they'd be doing me a favor and yourself a favor if you'd learn how to keep yourself safe. Just type into your browser internet safety, online safety for children, things like that, and that'll take you to websites where you can get that information on how to keep yourself safe online, right? So be sure and do that because there's a chat room present. Anytime there's a chat room present, you really need to know how to keep yourself safe, right? So thanks, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. Gypsy Witch, my good friend Gypsy Witch, is here with us this morning. Hello, dear. And we're looking at codependence, and we're looking at the codependence recovery process, and this is from Joy to You and Me. So this is from www.joy2com/codependency2.htm, and this is Robert Burney's webpages. And Robert Burney, he's a codependence counselor, therapist, and he's also an author. He's written a book called Codependence: The Dance of Wounded Souls, and he is a spiritual teacher and whatnot. So he's also a grief therapist, and so he's written a whole lot of web pages here. But this one section we've been looking at is called is the codependence section, and this is the last part of it. So it's the codependence recovery process: mental, emotional, and spiritual. And we're sort of heading towards the emotional part. And yesterday we were left off, and he was saying that we need to change our perspective and learn to practice discernment so that we can change our relationship with life and with ourselves. And we need to be proactive in our own process so we can stop being the victims of the old tapes and start owning the power to co-create our lives in a healthy, loving way. So we were talking about that yesterday. Excuse me, my voice is terrible this morning. But he says that recovery involves bringing to consciousness those beliefs and attitudes in our subconscious that are causing our dysfunctional reactions so that we can reprogram our ego defenses to allow us to live a healthy, fulfilling life instead of just surviving. So that we can own our own power to make choices for ourselves with our beliefs and values instead of unconsciously reacting to the old tapes. And recovery is consciousness raising. It is enlightenment, bringing the dysfunctional attitudes and beliefs out of the darkness of our subconscious into the light of consciousness. So he's getting really deep there. But it's just recovery is actually allowing ourselves to take a look at the stuff that we probably as survivors, I know myself, have, stuffed down into my subconscious, in order to survive, right? Quite often people will do that. You have to keep going, and you have to, as a child, you just learn to put things away, so that you don't have, because it's too painful or it doesn't make sense, possibly what's been, whether you grew up in a dysfunctional home or an abusive home, if it's too hard on the child, obviously abuse and dysfunction is hard on a child. And so, if it's painful and whatnot, we might stuff that right down and into our subconscious, and in order to deal, and then later on as adults, adult survivors having to take that back out and find it in there and actually look for it and bring it up to light, right? And so I think that, what he's talking about is it's important because that's what it really is all about. And I think that's why he says, recovery is enlightenment, right? It's becoming aware of what we actually need to work through. And so on an emotional level, he says on an emotional level, the dance of recovery is owning and honoring the emotional wounds so that we can release the grief energy, which is like the pain, rage, terror, and shame that is driving us. And that's that whole talk shame tough stuff, and that's what he talks about here. You know, John Bradshaw has a lot of stuff on toxic shame, healing the shame that binds you. I never did read that book. I'd like to get a hold of that book, and but John Bradshaw has a lot of great web pages and stuff too, and you can check out his stuff as well. And he talks a whole lot about the whole toxic shame, right? Toxic rage and whatnot, and all the stuff that kind of goes with it. And so, I know myself, you know, like. That was the main issue for me, was the rage and whatnot, what's going on inside my heart before I began my healing journey. And so, like, I didn't actually know how to get rid of that. You know, I thought, I don't want to just take this out on the world, you know what I mean? This is not the world's problem, it's my problem. I need to learn how to cope and how to deal with this. And, you know, I didn't realize that came from shame. I had no idea that the rage and the pain and the grief and the sorrow and all that was really shame-based, you know, because I didn't know a whole lot about shame, toxic shame. And so when I started really looking into John Bradshaw's stuff, you know, that's really where, you know, I was able to sort of get more information on that and learn, you know, that was not mine, you know, that was not my fault, like none of that stuff. And to have that rage and to have that all that toxic, you know, shame and stuff, you know, obviously was not our fault, right? But we have to learn how to see things in a different light, you know, and how to change these behaviors and how to, you know, so that we don't, you know, hurt ourselves or somebody else, you know what I mean? Especially with that you know, rage and stuff is a harsh way to live. You know, when you have this built-up rage inside you and there's nowhere to release it, you don't want to hurt other people around you. Generally, a lot of times, survivors will just hurt themselves, you know, because it's got to go somewhere. And I mean, I wanted to self-injure for many years, you know. It was I stopped myself, thank God, especially the last time, you know what I mean. I decided at that point, that's where I made the decision, you know, that I was going to allow myself to, you know, to go to look within and see what I need, and whether I wanted to get, you know, do self-help or whether it was going to be, you know, counseling or whatever, therapist, you know, I was going to allow myself to heal, because I realized that rage and stuff, you know, this is not a healthy way to live at all. And so, you know, we have to really get in touch with this stuff in order to be able to have a healthy life with healthy attitudes and beliefs and whatnot. And it's very important, and that's why I think he's included this with the actual recovery portion of it. Thanks everybody for being here. With quite a few people here this morning. That's just awesome. And so I like what he has to say here. And he says the shame is toxic and it's not ours. It never was. And he says we did nothing to be ashamed of who we were. We were just kids. Just as our parents were little kids when they were wounded and shamed, and their parents before them, etc., etc. This is shame about being human that has been passed down from generation to generation. So there's no blame here, he says. There are no bad guys, only wounded souls and broken hearts and scrambled minds. So he says codependence is dysfunctional because it's emotionally dishonest. As long as we're reacting to childhood wounds and old tapes, we're not capable of being in the moment in an emotionally honest, age-appropriate way. It is necessary to be healing the childhood wounds and have an emotionally honest relationship with ourselves internally in order to respond to life honestly in the moment. So he says, like, when the role model of what a man is does not allow a man to cry or express fear, when the role model for what a woman is does not allow a woman to be angry or aggressive, that is emotional dishonesty. When the standards of a society deny the full range of the emotional spectrum and label certain emotions as negative, that is not only emotionally dishonest, it creates emotional disease. So, really honestly, I like what he has to say here. I really like Robert Burney. He gets really deep and he really looks, you know, he's not only just looking at the individual, but he's looking at the dysfunction of society and the way that we've all been programmed, you know, to behave and to feel and to think. You know what I mean? Like, you know, quite often parents, when their children they might have a son, and the son start crying, and they'll say to that son, "Oh, boys don't cry, men don't cry. What's the matter with you? Do you straighten up? You be tough," you know, and causing, you know, that child to push those feelings down inside, and, you know, you keep doing that, and what you have at the end of that is toxic rage and shame and everything else, you know, and telling a woman that she can't express her emotions by becoming angry or aggressive, you know, is, you know, oh, you're a lady, you have to behave like a lady, and you have to take it, and you have to sit there and take it and smile. You know, I mean, that's so like he's saying, emotionally dishonest. It's actually very twisted, but society believes that, and so society puts that. That's how so many people grow up. That's how so many people continue the cycle on. And it's like emotions are emotions; they need to be dealt with on the spot, and so that you can get rid of it. Because once you allow yourself to feel what you need to feel, whether it's, the anger is actually. I did a lot of work on anger. Not too. I'd say maybe must have been this winter sometime, but I did probably months looking into anger, anger, rage, and whatnot, right? And anger is actually a natural, normal response, and it's necessary. Anger tells us there's something wrong, and so anger is just normal. But if you don't allow yourself to feel it and to address it when you need to, it becomes rage, right? It becomes twisted. So that's the problem, right? We are emotionally, suppressing what we really need to be feeling, and then later on, we have to allow ourselves to feel, to get through this stuff, and it's hard because it's no longer anger, it's rage. It's no longer, it's no longer just feeling down. It's depression. It becomes the extreme. It becomes the toxic stuff, right? And so I really like what he has to say here. And he says if a culture is based on emotional dishonesty with role models that are not honest emotionally, then the culture is also emotionally dysfunctional, because the people of that society are set up to be emotionally dishonest and dysfunctional and getting their emotional needs met. What we traditionally have called normal parenting in this society is abusive because it is emotionally dishonest. And he says, we live in emotionally dishonest and spiritually hostile societies. Trying to get sane in an insane world is crazy making. And that's what he's written here. Some of his stuff is pretty funny, but it's really good. And I mean, it's really true. It's completely honest. We expect people, because we basically put our own belief systems on everybody else. And if we grow up dysfunctional, then obviously we're believing that everybody else should be behaving dysfunctionally, right? So that's what parents do to their children. The children then in turn pass that on to their children, and that's considered to be normal, proper behavior. And when it's not. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's pretty deep, this stuff, because it's going all the way, taking a look at the whole mess, right? So he says, we are set up to be emotionally dysfunctional by our role models, both parental and societal, and we are taught to repress and distort our emotional process. We are trained to be emotionally dishonest when we are children. And he says, attempting to suppress emotions is dysfunctional. It does not work. Emotion or energy, emotion, right? He says, energy and motion. It is supposed to be in motion. It is meant to flow. Emotions have a purpose, a very good reason to be even those emotions that feel uncomfortable. Fear is a warning. Anger is for protection. Tears are for cleansing and releasing. And these are not negative emotional responses. We were taught to react negatively to them. So it is our reaction that is dysfunctional and negative, not the emotion. So fear, this is just it, right? I mean, like living in fear, is not a good way to live. But fear itself is not bad, because it's a warning. It tells us there's something going on that we need to be alerted to, that we need to be aware of. Anger is for protection. It means there's something wrong. If we get angry, it means something needs to be addressed, right? Something's not right, so we need to address it. It doesn't mean we need to get all out of control and abuse people with it. What it is proper anger is a normal anger is fine. And so what he says here is that tears are for cleansing and releasing. And tears, everybody should be allowed to cry when they need to cry. And I know so many kids growing up, are told, you stop crying right now. You know what I mean? You're not allowed to cry. And basically what that does is shuts the kid down emotionally. Right? They're not allowed to feel what they need to feel. And sometimes kids just need to cry, and you need to allow them to cry. And I know when I was growing up, and we were, like, I talk a lot about this whole issue, with my mom and stuff. And, my mother, if she would beat on me or whatever, I'd be crying. She would tell me if I didn't stop crying, I'd get another beating. So, she's like, I'll beat you worse if you keep crying. So, of course, you're going to stop crying. And so what that does is it sets you up for rage, internal rage later on, which is very, very unhealthy. You know what I mean? And so, and even young boys are told not to cry. And I mean, that's so incredibly wrong, because men have emotions they need to release as well. And so it's harsh that we've almost all of us probably had to kind of deal with this at some point or another. I don't think anybody's really been left untouched by this. You know what I mean? By this emotional dishonesty, and I like what he said here. The we're taught to react negatively to these emotions, right? So it's our perception of them, right? Oh, if I'm crying, I must be a wimp. Oh, if I'm crying, that means I just must be, not able to handle anything. So, I got to be tougher. I got to be stronger. It's this whole, not realizing that tears are very cleansing, and sometimes we need to cry. You know what I mean? And anger, some people think, oh, I'm never going to show any anger because, that's not the right thing to do. They might have been brought up and taught that they're not allowed to get angry or be angry. And a lot of women were told that as children, you have to act like a lady and you have to take whatever's coming to you. And so, you're not allowed to show anger. And then it becomes very distorted. And instead of anger, it becomes rage. And so many people, I believe, have been brought up like this, and that's why our societies are really so messed up, right? He says emotional honesty is absolutely vital to the health of the being. Denying, distorting, and blocking our emotions in reaction to false beliefs and dishonest attitudes causes emotional and mental disease. And this emotional and mental disease causes physical, biological imbalance, which produces physical disease, right? So it's all very much connected. I believe that too. You could, if you spend your life in a good environment, feeling very, your health is going to be better. Your breathing is going to be better. Probably won't. Many people wouldn't necessarily turn to things like drugs or alcohol if they were growing up in a situation where there was love and nurturing and care and concern and a good, healthy, balanced lifestyle, right, with people around them that were healthy and balanced. And I can't imagine why anybody would go and do some of these things that people do if they were. You know what I mean? I think that it all does take a toll physically on you as well, because I think that people, I know myself, like I've always been very, had problems with anxiety. I think it's anxiety just because I'm nervous like most of the time. I can relax sometimes and that's no problem, but I think that I've always held myself a little bit strained, so my breathing is not good. And, I think that because of that, I don't get enough air, right? And then I started smoking and doing drugs at a very young age. And so obviously that's going to take its toll, physically. But not only that, just holding that rage and that anger. And I mean, but 4 years ago when I started my healing journey, I remember sitting on the couch and I had so much pain in my heart. And I thought, okay, not just pain in my heart, like it's rage, it's everything else. It was a whole lot of bad feelings that were just making me literally want to kill myself. I mean, that's horrible. But the thing is it was making me very ill, not only emotionally, not only psychologically, but very physically. It's hard on your body because it keeps you in a state of kind of, adrenaline pumping through if you're getting upset about things. And adrenaline is actually really bad and hard on your body. And it's usually happens when there's a flight or fight situation. And many children who have been abused, if they are being attacked physically or even just threatened, their lives threatened and whatnot, or sexually, the adrenaline starts to pump. And adrenaline is like, a little bit of it's not probably all that bad because it's just a natural process. But when the child spends enough time like that, with enough adrenaline flowing all the time, it's actually quite, I think, toxic. And so it's hard on a person's body, right? So I think that they have done many studies, with the correlation between taking a look at the correlation between the, people who have been abused and who have, been mistreated or lived in dysfunctional families or dysfunctional lifestyles. Many of those people actually have health problems, whether it's, heart problems or vascular problems or, any number of problems, right? And a lot of it's caused by nerves, and I think just bad nervous sort of tension and being uptight and upset all the time, because you're not breathing properly when you're doing that, because you're not relaxed, right? Half the time I don't even think about my breathing. And I know when I do actually make a conscious effort to sit back and breathe properly, I feel better, right? But how many times during the day do I actually do that? Like none, right? Because I'm just busy. I do my thing. I got to work, and I'm a busy person, so most of us are. So do we really ever sit down and actually just do any kind of these, meditation type things where, allow ourselves to just breathe and just relax and just feel ourselves in the moment, in the now, and just feeling, the tension roll away and whatnot. That's stuff that I don't do and that I probably could benefit from. And I know, like, I had a show here not too long ago with Ray Luskin, and she was taking me through one of those meditation things where you actually relax and bring yourself down to a point where you're just relaxed and you're feeling good. And I think, how many times a day, do I do that? Probably not even any. I probably don't even do that like once a month, And it's hard to keep your body at that stressful, go, go, go level all the time. And then when you're dealing with a lot of other stuff, like whether it's depression or just being down, or, these issues that can come about from being abused, the survivors' PTSD and whatnot, flashbacks and things like that. It's a harsh way to spend your life, And so, it's no wonder that people's health just goes downhill, It does affect you physically as well. I think that's very true. And I think they've done enough study on it now to find that it really does. It says codependence is a deadly and fatal disease because of emotional dishonesty and suppression, and it breaks our hearts, scrambles our minds, and eventually kills our physical body vehicles because of the spiritual disease, because of our wounded souls. The key to healing our wounded souls is to get clear and honest in our emotional process. Until we can get clear and honest with our human emotional responses, until we can change the twisted, distorted, negative perspectives and reactions to our human emotions that are a result of having been born into and grown up in a dysfunctional, emotionally repressive, spiritually hostile environment, we cannot. He's getting into it. We cannot get clearly in touch with the level of emotional energy that is truth. So we cannot get clearly in touch with and reconnected to our spiritual self. And I think that is really what it is, In order to heal, we have to really get to the truth. And like I know myself, I'm doing, that's why I'm really looking into the codependency stuff. It's because I had no idea really what it was for many years, didn't know even what it meant, as far as how it correlated with me, you know what I mean, and whether or not I was codependent or grew up with people who were codependent. And looking at it, I was completely codependent. And my family was completely codependent. And so I wanted to take a look at this stuff to try to recognize some of these behaviors, that I'm doing and that other people are doing around me so that I don't fall into this whole codependent trap, you know what I mean? Because I want to change my behaviors as well as learn some positive stuff, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm taking a look at the codependency stuff. And I think so many people, like I said, even, before, you don't even have to have been abused to be living a codependent lifestyle. You know what I mean? So many people are codependent and don't even know what it is or that they shouldn't be, that it's not a good behavior, right? Many people think it's the way to go because that's how society is. But it's actually very much a false life, if you ask me. Just living life through somebody else or living a false, unrealistic lifestyle, right? Because it's not real. It's not a real life. We're just living through somebody else or expecting somebody else to live for us, right? And so I wanted to get away from that. When I left my family and moved to Canada at the age of 29, like I was basically running away at the age of 29. I was like, goodbye, I have to leave now. I just couldn't stand, I couldn't take any more abuse. I just couldn't be around any more of the psychological, emotional garbage that my parents were still putting on each other and me. And so I thought, man, I need to get away from that. And I had no idea how my behaviors were really at that point. I knew I was off drugs and I had stopped doing drugs at that point, and I had, wasn't drinking and was actually trying to look after myself, sort of, you know what I mean, and working and whatnot. But I had never taken a look at my behaviors and didn't realize that the actual damage that was done, you know what I mean, and the dysfunction, what it caused me, my belief systems to be. And so a lot of it I didn't recognize, and I've actually had a few people point a few things out to me. And these were life skill coaches and whatnot, who were saying, well, this behavior, if you keep on with it, it's not going to help you. Whereas you could change that around, and you could, you could actually do yourself quite well. You could get a lot further in this life if you actually change that around for different things that I've been doing throughout my life, and without somebody if we don't see them and we don't recognize them, then how we ever fix it, Some of the stuff is so deeply rooted, like how would you even know that it's not a correct belief system anyway, or that it's not a healthy, I should say not correct, what's correct, but a healthy belief system or a healthy lifestyle, right? So, it's been interesting to take a look at this stuff. He says a formula for recovery for empowerment, serenity, and freedom. He says codependence, codependency, adult child of alcoholic and dysfunctional family recovery, inner child healing, develop loving relationships with the wounded parts of ourselves, emotional energy release, grief, including rage work, and reprogramming of dysfunctional codependent mental attitudes and false beliefs. So this is a formula for recovery. So codependence, codependency, adult child of alcoholic or dysfunctional family recovery, inner child healing, which is develop loving relationships with the wounded parts of ourself, which I've been sort of working on, emotional energy release, grief work, right? Going through grief work, including rage, which is I don't know if I need to do that anymore. I actually feel pretty good. I don't know if part of me is still grieving, you know what I mean? Like that little part of me from my inner child. And that's why I still want to get in touch with parts of my, that whole inner child and really do some more work on that. But as far as emotional energy release, I got rid of the rage. The rage is no longer there. Thank God, because that was a miserable feeling, and I had felt like that for so long. It was just part of my makeup, and I'm so glad that that's gone. And people would say, how did it go? Well, I started to feel differently. I just allowed myself to feel differently. So instead of going out and screaming my head off and giving myself a really bad headache, because I thought that I might not actually recover from that scream thing. I wanted to go out into a field and just scream and scream and scream as loud as I could and pound the earth and fall all over the place and just roll around and let all this rage out, right? And I thought, would I be able to come back from that, emotionally? Like, would I be able to, some people say, yeah, probably, you would let that out and you would, you'd be able to sit back and breathe and just allow yourself to calm down. But I just decided not to go about it that way. So I can't do that in my apartment because I live in an apartment, and I thought people would think I was being killed or I was killing somebody. So I thought, okay, that would not work. So I thought, no, I'm going to have to do this another way. And so what I did is I started to change the way I felt. And I started to allow myself, and I do allow myself time to cry. Like if I need to take it off and just cry, then, or if I need to just rest or whatever, I do allow myself to do those things. Because it's very important that we do allow ourselves to do what we need to do to get through this stuff, So, and he says reprogramming of dysfunctional codependent mental attitudes and false beliefs is also part of it. Internal boundaries to counteract toxic shame, abuse of critical parent disease voice. I've done a lot of work on that already, the whole, toxic shame thing and the critical parent voice. I actually don't hear a whole lot of that critical parent voice anymore. Once in a while, it'll pop up and I just ignore it because I'm like, you know what, I don't have to listen to that anymore. That doesn't belong to me. That was not my issue. That was just a voice that I don't have to listen to anymore because it was false. It was not true, the things that my critical inner parent voice say to me, which is all, kind of negative stuff, right? And I've started replacing it with good stuff, no, I can do this, and no, I'm fine, and if I need help, I'm going to get it. But I'm okay to admit when I'm not okay. I don't have one of these things where I think I used to be like that. No, I'm fine, even though I wasn't fine. That's exactly why I couldn't heal, because I was not allowing myself to say the words that I needed to say, which was that I'm not fine. 4 years ago when I started this healing journey, I for the first time allowed myself to say, you know what, I'm not fine. I am completely messed up. And so, because for years I had been saying, no, I'm fine, it's all good. Just faking myself out and faking the world out in order to keep moving forward, right? So, just to keep going, right? So that was false. Totally false. And so when I actually started to accept the fact that I wasn't fine and I needed help and I started reaching out, that's when I was actually really on my healing journey. So that's 4 years now. But I don't have to listen to that voice anymore, and so I don't. That critical disease parent voice. So spiritual integration of belief in loving higher power, God force, goddess energy, great spirit into emotional relationship with self and life. Joy and love to me and you. So he says the next portion is of what he's got here is either the inner child healing or emotional abuse, right? But this is all, we just finished up the codependency part. So hopefully everybody got something out of this. So thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. Hopefully my show is still streaming, but you guys have a great day. If you need, if you can't cope, if you have no one to talk to and you're just really struggling, make sure, you get some help. You do not allow yourself to just suffer on your own without even being able to talk to somebody. And, if you can't find anybody because they're all working or whatever, and sometimes friends are just not available, you know what I mean, and sometimes family doesn't want to talk, you know. So if you have to, you phone a crisis line, but you do something, right? You make sure that you get some help. Like, you do not allow yourself to be destroyed by your past. You don't allow yourself to, you know, to hurt yourself or whatever, you know what I mean. You make sure that you reach out and you get some help. There's all kinds of crisis lines, all kinds of information on the web, and you know, I'm if you need any of my resources that I have, you can get a hold of me here on Blog Talk Radio or whatnot. And but make sure that you do, you know, and you know, allow yourself to heal and allow yourself to feel better, right? We all deserve that. We all deserve to have a good life, but ultimately it is up to us to reach out and actually grab it and make it happen. And it is our responsibility because nobody else can do it for us, right? We have to do this ourselves. So make sure that, you know, you make the right decision, you stick around, right? Because I do care. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing these shows. I wish I could have got to my brothers, you know, but I couldn't get to them, and no one could. So you make sure you stick around, right? So have a great day, everybody. Take good care of yourselves, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.